My guest today on the podcast is one of the most influential people in Kansas City real estate. Kim Tucker, the co-founder of the Kansas City REIA Association, is going to tell us about her greatest regret that she has in real estate, as well as some of the mistakes that she's made along the way. Love this episode. I know you will. Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Mistake-Free Real Estate Podcast. My name is Marck Lautour, and today I'm joined in studio from the co-founder of the Mid-America Association of Real Estate Investors, Kim Tucker.
Yeah, you got it right.
I got it right. It's a mouthful.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, it's nice to have someone in person. A lot of these are done virtually, but you're someone who I see in the community all the time, Kim. You've really become a presence in Kansas City. So today, you just wanted to take some time. I know our audience is so interested in Kansas City real estate, so it'll give us a chance to kind of go over the lay of the land, how you see Kansas City real estate, a little bit about your story of how you became a landlord and got out of the landlord business, and what you see from some of the mistakes that investors are making, because you have a pretty good pulse on real estate investor activity in Kansas City, don't you?
A little bit. I get to meet with 100 or so every week, or not every week, every month. And then I go to some of the other groups here in town that are weekly. So I get to see everybody quite often. So
let's back up and talk a little bit about why you and Don co-founded Marry. What exactly was your thought behind starting a REIA?
Well, we got started in real estate in about 2000, and we joined a local club here. Only thing is, we found out that the local club, that everybody there had maybe one deal, maybe two deals, but they really didn't know a lot about real estate. And we went to a big event in Florida, which was a 4-day event where it poured down rain the whole time. So instead of going to the beach like we had planned, part of the time we spent the whole time at the event. And it was a big one of those big sell-a-thons, speaker after speaker selling stuff. So we started talking to the people putting it on, how their REIA was ran, how it worked, what they did for their people. And we came home with a business plan to start a REIA that actually had people doing deals, people speaking that actually knew what they were talking about. And we kind of just came home and sent out some emails. I had a buyer's list, a cash buyer's list. I invited those people out. I invited, I did some scraping of Section 8, who owns Section 8 houses, and mailed those people letters, and we've been going ever since.
What year was that when you founded it?
We started putting it all together in November of 2003, and our first meeting was January 2004.
Wow, I feel like I was there pretty soon thereafter. It's been a while since we've known each other.
Yeah. I think we did an event together probably somewhere around 2006, 2007. I know we did an event together.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, it's been a fun ride. Tell us a little bit about you. So obviously before this, you were a real estate investor. What attracted you to real estate in general? Were you in corporate America before that? How did you get involved in real estate?
I was a store manager at an Osco drugstore. So I worked 80, 120 hours a week, and I'm like, this isn't working for me. And my husband at the time, he had a job where he was working for a construction company, and he was busy. The construction company didn't have the backing they really needed, so he was busy getting the start check from this investor or this homeowner so they could pay the bills for the job they're working on before. So he was robbing Peter to pay Paul. He got really tired of it real soon, and we started an environmental company. Shortly after that, he quit and started an environmental company. Except with that, you have so much licensing, and he had all the license, but to get into it, it didn't work out. And in the meantime, while we're trying to drum up business for that, he started going to real estate investor meetings, bought Carlton Sheets, sent it back because he didn't like it, got his money back, and he learned basically from his knowledge of real estate. We started buying and flipping houses, and
were you guys
doing that ever since?
Were you the no money down, kind of the seller financing? Will you always be creative people, or did you buy a house, rehab it, and sell it?
We bought it with. But at the time, we had a line of credit on our house, a HELOC.
Yep.
And we bought it with a HELOC, rehabbed it, and sold it. Then we got into, we never really worked with hard money lenders, but a lot of banks have their version of a hard money loan. It's just a lot cheaper.
Construction loan, effectively.
The construction loans, so we used those for a while. And then one day, some guy just walked into our office and said, hey, could you use my money to invest? And that's where our getting private money came in. It just walked in the door one day. And so we have some family private money, some individuals we know in the community that for private money, and then some of our own money to do the deals.
So you're still an active investor. Mm-hmm. Yep, doing 30, 40 deals a year, something like that?
We try to shoot for around 15 to 20.
Okay.
We did a volume study. We had a person that was all on doing a lot of deals that was in our office. This was more the flipping part. And she was like, just to do a deal, whatever money she could get out of it. And then my son was doing much fewer deals, but he was going for more quality deals, better profits. And he made more money on 10 deals than she made on 40 deals. So we focus on quality deals over volume where we make $1,000 to $2,000. It doesn't make sense to even go into a deal for $2,000. If that's the case, we'll list it as a realtor and go on down the road that way, because it just doesn't make sense to go into a deal to make under $5,000.
Oh no. I mean, I'm chuckling because I'm looking back at 2022 when we got caught scaling aggressively in the beginning of 2022, and we bought, I think, 150 houses last year or something like that. And there's probably 50 of them that I probably wish I didn't buy. And
doing a deal to do a deal usually ends up, we had a few of those in 2007 and 2008 where we broke even, but we worked for 3 months to get the deal to buy the deal, to rehab it, get it sold, and then we had nothing to show for it. And so, but we're doing a deal to do a deal, and I don't recommend doing that. No,
well, there's good piece of advice right there. So pivoting, you obviously you're an active investor still, but there was a time where you were a landlord. You jumped into the landlording game, owned some rental properties. Tell us about how that came about and what your experience was.
Well, we had never really wanted to be a landlord, but we had an opportunity where a seller said, hey, well, I'll seller finance you. Great. But the houses turned into, our plan at the beginning was we were going to buy them and then rehab them one at a time and then sell them off, because they were in areas we were rehabbing and selling to landlords like, out-of-state landlords. There's all kinds of turnkey operators back before 2008. Mm-hmm. Most of them are not in business like you are now. They kind of all went by the wayside, but they were buying up houses so we could buy them, we could rehab them and sell them to them. But as we were approaching into 2008, getting those sold were getting harder and harder. So we sold them all off as a package to somebody else. But they were urban core properties. We had a lot of inherited tenants that sort of paid, but not necessarily all the time. And it was just, and then our biggest problem wasn't the tenants, wasn't the houses, it was dealing with the city of Kansas City, Missouri. So
yeah, some valuable lessons there. We have a pretty definitive buy box, and we really, other than, I guess, south of 63rd Street, once you get hit Waldo, Brookside, we completely avoid the Kansas City, Missouri area inside 435. Have you found that to just be an absolute problem area?
Well, there's pockets, but I was talking to an investor from Colorado a few years ago, and he was all excited that he had bought a house that he could buy for, $60,000, and he was going to rehab it, and it would be worth $200,000. And I'm like, yeah, but back in the day, that $200,000 house, as soon as 2008 happened, that $200,000 house was suddenly worth $10,000. I don't think that's going to happen again to that extent, but I can see our urban core values just tanking still. Yeah. So you're right. I would be very cautious.
Do you flip in that part of town?
No,
you don't. No.
We have a house that we are hard money lenders on right now, so we're going to see how that works.
You're watching closely.
We're watching closely, but when I see ARVs of 300,000, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah. So to kind of pull something out of what you've just talked about, your story of being a landlord and then getting rid of the properties, clearly the mistakes that you would admit that you have made were probably, was it scaling too quickly, trying to get too big too quick?
Too many properties at once. Mm-hmm. As a new landlord, not knowing what to do. We'd read it in a book, but to actually do what the book says, we probably needed a good property manager. And unfortunately, when you're dealing with cheaper houses, lower rentals, lower price rents coming in, there's not a lot of profit in it for a property manager. So hiring a property manager was really tough.
Yeah.
Back then, there were property managers that would take on the urban core, but there are not many that I know of that will even touch them anymore.
Yeah. So obviously, so that leads us to a next key point, not only scaling too quick, getting too many, but location, and then having a good property manager, either committing to do it yourself if you're local and you're have no other job and you want to do that, but finding a property manager that cares and will, treat the property with the respect that you would want is a challenge.
And the other word of caution, even if you can manage it yourself and you can put all your systems in place, you need to have those systems, because there's a few landlords that have quite a few properties here in Kansas City that our local tenant association took on, and a lot of the problems that those landlords were having was not that they were doing anything wrong. They just didn't have systems in place to track tenant complaints, whether something got done. And working, when you have those systems in place, just manage it on cell phone and texts and not a good records. Stuff falls through the cracks, and it doesn't happen the way it's supposed to. So I would highly recommend, if you're going to manage yourself, to invest in systems, learn systems, have somebody help you get them set up so you don't have anything falling through the cracks. Yeah,
the software that you have to use to get really good at property management is not only deep, it's also the breadth of and depth of the ways that you can actually use it is amazing. We're still learning. I am still learning. My team's pretty well versed, but I'm still learning that there are things even as simple as getting the serial number from the refrigerator when it goes in and storing that in your rent manager system is amazing. And then, to your point, the tracking of service tickets and issues that come up all the time. Not only is it critical to respond to the tenant, but also for future tracking of what's happening with the property. All of these things need to be done in such detail that I think the owner sometimes doesn't appreciate the level at which it takes to run the property management.
I saw a post on Facebook from a landlord that probably has 2 or 3 properties, and they were showing, the tenant just moved out, and look at the furnace filter. They had never changed it. And I'm like, well, dude, why don't you go change it once a quarter? Just so you have a reason to walk in the house to see how bad they're destroying your house or how well they're keeping it up. And some people just don't have those systems. I was a tenant for a very brief point. We sold our house, didn't know where we wanted to live. So we moved into a rental. One of the big property management companies, part of Mary, was our landlord. And they had a reason to be in our unit once a quarter just to see how things were going. And I knew that's what they were doing, but, it's something you need to do. Is you need to check on your rentals. Either you do or your property manager does. So,
yeah, the old adage, a house is like an apple that's just rotting at the core, and if you don't go, take care of the skin and by painting and the insides by fixing up and making sure you hold it accountable, it will just continue to rot over time, I guess. What are some of the you're really in touch with a lot of what's going on in the community. What are some of the hot button issues right now, not only in Kansas City but nationwide, that are coming through the REIAs that you're focusing on?
Well, this came down the 25th, so Wednesday. Was that Tuesday or Wednesday?
Hot off the press.
Hot off the press, straight out of the White House. 50 of our Democratic congressmen had written a letter to the White House asking them to do all these things. And we have a blog post about it on our REIA group if you want to go read it. And they were demanding all these things to be done. They want nationwide rent control so that not just New York and a few of those places that have rent control, that we all get to have it on all federally. Anybody that's receiving federal money on their properties, they want to see no source of income, so we can't make everybody accept Section 8. And they don't want you to be able to actually screen a tenant. You shouldn't be able to see anybody's eviction records or their credit history. They want to curb what the tenant screening companies can do.
Wow.
And so a letter came down from the White House on the 25th. We've got this posted to, I guess, Biden and a lot of the big industry associations like the apartment owners, the property manager groups, they all sat down at the table with the White House, and we have eliminated the really bad stuff. They've made it so it's not as harsh. But they do have some regulatory agencies putting in place. They're working on it. Some things that will stop short of rent control, but might force all the other stuff on us.
So what can we do to help? What's your call to action when you see something like that? Because you're obviously, a voice in the community that people listen to. What are you telling people to do?
Well, I would be very aware of what's coming down right now. So you can go to the marei.org, marei.org website. There are recent blogs around the 25th of January, depending on when you're watching this. But see what's going on. I'm waiting for guidance from different associations. All of the statement letters I'm seeing from the big national organizations are, let's work with them to keep it from being as bad as it could be, because if you got to give from both sides to get somewhere. Try to focus on creating more affordable housing, but be aware that rent control could come down at any time, so make sure you're not under market on your rents. Make sure you do know what you're doing so you're not taking advantage of your renters, that things are happening the way they should be. But being very aware, and there's a lot of stuff going on at the local level too. So for example, I'm here in Kansas City, we're here in Kansas City, and we have 5 major counties? And then I don't even know how many cities there are in our metro. But for me to keep an eye on all of them is impossible. For any one person to do it's impossible. But if everybody's aware of what's going on in the city where they live, and share it with everybody else. So if something bad is coming down, right now they're trying to change, I think it's Belton, is trying to come up with a new rental inspection ordinance. Kansas City, Missouri is looking into do Airbnb regulations. So knowing what's going on locally, whether you try to stop it, make it less bad, or you are in place to be able to comply with it. I mean, because everything you can figure out how to work with, if they change the rules, just about everything but Airbnb, you can probably figure out how to work with it. But I know there's a few cities where everybody had an Airbnb, the money works great on the rental for an Airbnb, and suddenly you can't be an Airbnb anymore. So I would be very cautious on that front on an Airbnb, because your city could change the rules.
Yep, couldn't agree more. Last night, actually, we have an Airbnb in Indian Rocks Beach in Florida, and they had a big meetup for all of the residents last night on a Zoom call, and very interesting. The residents are obviously saying, hey, homes, not hotels. We don't want to have loud music till all hours, and you have too many people in there. Well, and then obviously the flip side is, hey, there's no regulations right now. That's the minority. Most of the people come in and have quiet enjoyment of the premises and enjoy it. So this battle where, suddenly you've got these local elections are becoming so critical to the viability of an entire business model. I mean, Airbnb has opened up the game. It's changed the game. So it's probably one of the biggest revelations since you and I have been around, is this whole Airbnb thing, because it's truly, elevated a house that, you've on both spectrums, you've got small houses that you couldn't really cash flow prior that are now becoming massively cash flowing. So it's driving up the cost of real estate, maybe just because it's close to the Chiefs Stadium or Royal Stadium. And then you've got a $2 million house on the beach in Florida that suddenly I can now enjoy as a second home, because suddenly I'm getting all this rental income, which I would never have been able to afford that, previously. So it's elevated real estate in general all around, but suddenly legislation can kick in, to your point.
And part of the legislation, because I travel a lot to Colorado, and so I'm always looking at what the local stuff is going on in the different cities in Colorado. And the big thing is, there's no place for the people that live in Colorado to live. Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri is just the same way. That's one of the reasons we wanted to leave the Lake of the Ozarks. I could go out to eat, but I might have no wait staff. There might be one waitress and one cook for the whole entire restaurant, because the people that work there's no place for them to live. They're used to summer influx of people to come help run things, and there's no place for them to live anymore because every other house is an Airbnb.
Yeah.
And so it sits vacant, if it's rented out, but a lot of them are also second homes, and everything's sitting vacant a lot of the time. So there's no place for people to live. And that's what they're doing in a lot of these vacation areas.
Take me back to COVID. When COVID hit, there was kind of a big cry from residents and tenants around Kansas City. And actually, we were probably lucky that it didn't. I mean, there was a small outcropping, but I mean, it wasn't like Portland, Oregon, or New York where there was this don't pay rent. Residents against rent and all this. Landlords are suddenly evil people. Talk a little bit about your experience during that time and how you kind of rallied the troops to go. Because didn't you go down to City Hall and...
I stayed home on Zoom, but some people went down to City Hall. But what I thought was interesting, we have a group that is supposedly representing all of the tenants in Kansas City. They're organizing them, helping them, what is it? I can't even come up with the word, but they're organizing tenants to go protest. But I know we had a city council meeting. The city council was voting on the new Tenants' Bill of Rights, which basically could have been a lot worse, except for 300 people showed up at that city council meeting, and line by line we got things changed. But the group that were representing all of the tenants in Kansas City, there were about 30 of them at this meeting, and you go to the rallies, there's about 30 of them. So I don't know. They're very, very visible on the news.
Yeah, it makes for a good news story, right?
Because they've got pickets signs and they're chaining themselves to the courthouse. But it's only a small minority, and I'm thinking the majority of the tenants, just like we say, only 5% of the landlords are bad, and they're making all these rules and regulations for everybody for 5% of the landlords. Only 5% of the tenants are causing any issues. The rest of them are just going about their lives, paying their rent, and perfectly happy. So yeah. I think that all of these advocacy groups for the tenants, great. I think they're doing great things for a lot of the tenants, but I don't know that they're representing the thoughts and feelings of 100% of the tenants, just like,
It's a loud minority.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that seems to be the case.
But when you chain yourself to the courthouse and shut down eviction court, you're going to get on the news.
So starting a REIA and involved in real estate, you must come across just a ton of unique and different people. How do you stay away from that shiny object syndrome? You're always getting people to come in.
That's the problem.
You meet so many interesting people. You have them come in and speak, and there's always new people coming to your events. Tell me a little bit about that joy, because I see the sparkle in your eye when you're at your events. That's where you do the best. You're a connector. It's probably your genius zone, right? Speaking to that,
somewhere in there, yes.
Being a connector, and someone will be telling you something. Oh, you need to talk to this person over here because I can get you guys together. Tell us a little bit about your events and how much you enjoy those.
Well, some days I don't want to go. I'm like, but I drag myself to them. Some days you just don't want to get out of the house. Then you get there, and when you get home, I'm always hyped up at the end of the night. Doesn't matter who was speaking, whether, I had just one of our members up there sharing their latest deal, or if I have a national speaker that's training on something specific, or we get our little hot button things, people come in with a little bit more controversial investments and get everybody riled up. But it doesn't matter who it is. We always come home we're all hyped up with, we need to do this. Even if it's not what we want to do in investing, they've came in with ideas that we can implement for what we're doing. So I can learn from everybody. And even if I'm at the front of the room teaching, I learn from what people say in the audience. I love it when I have an audience that will speak back. And I know all the speakers do. The more activity you get from your audience, the more interaction you get from a live audience, the more energy and the more people everybody gets out of the event. So
if someone's coming to a REIA for the first time, how do you instruct them to get, quote unquote, the most out of the event? Like what is the best things to do if someone's going up to a meetup like that?
Well, I see a lot of people, there's two different times. So you're saying meetup and REIA. So you have a meetup, and here in Kansas City, our meetups meet more often, and they're usually a smaller group. Okay. Typically. We have some that happen from time to time that are as large as ours, but most of them are around 20 or 30. You come to our meeting, we've probably got 100 people. We have, and most REIA groups that are run like mine, we have a set time for networking. We'll have vendors with tables, and then we have a set time for a speaker to present on some topic. So to get the most out of it is arrive on time, arrive early, check in, and get a name tag so people know who you are. Don't go in and find a seat so you're where you need to be to see the speaker and be comfortable. Save your seat, but then go in and talk to all the vendors. Find out what they do. Even if you know the vendors, they might have something new that you need to know. Try to meet 5 to 10 new people that you don't know. Find out what they do. Do a little bit of work before you go so you have an agenda. So if you need to learn something or you need a referral on something, have a list of what you're seeking so you can ask for it. And when somebody comes up to you, hey, why are you here? You can go, oh, yeah, now I remember. Because sometimes you get put on the spot, you forget what you want to say. Write it down, have an agenda. Bring business cards, although don't ever ask me for my business card. I'd never have one. But
well, everyone knows you. You don't need a business card.
That's what I figure. But no, my business cards are always out of date. So, but during the networking, and stick around for afterwards, because usually there's more networking afterwards. And even if you know, like you might be an expert on whatever it is the speaker is teaching, you'll still get something out of it. So I would say sitting down, paying attention to what the speaker says. You might not get anything out of it other than you find out 4 people in the room need to do business with you, and you can go talk to them after the meeting. I have one of our vendors, he invests a little bit, but he's probably there to sell his cabinets. And he says, I do more business selling my cabinets after the meeting with the 10% that stick around than I do with all the people I meet before the meeting when 100% of the people are there. He says, so always stick around. And if there is a meeting after the meeting, we don't have those right now because the hotel doesn't have the staff, and I think they actually closed their bar. I think they're remodeling. But the meeting after the meeting, a lot of business gets done. So if there's one of those, you should stick around because I know a lot of groups, we don't have that right now. We had it before COVID. They'll either have a meeting in the bar afterwards or they'll go to a bar across the street. And that's very well worth it as well. You'll find the people with the money are sticking around. The people that want to help or that want to do deals are sticking around to talk about real estate.
So you have a pretty good community of wholesalers and investors that come to those. Do you also get the private money guys coming in just to kind of check it out and see who they want to start lending money to?
We have a lot of hard money lenders that are advertising that they're there, but there are a lot of private money lenders in the room, and they're not going out saying, hey, borrow my money.
Yeah, they're just keeping an open eye.
They're just getting to know people, and then as you build the relationship, it'll come up that you have a deal and you need help. We have one member that's running a virtual meeting once a week for people to bring their deals to, and she's just getting this off the ground. But other groups run a similar event like this, and it's just to bring your deals. And so people with money are on the meeting, in the room, in the Zoom room, in the virtual room, and you share your deal, and people can get together and do deals that way. Without going out, and advertising, please lend me money. You can just talk about your deal and get money that way. And I found bragging about your deals is the best way to find money, is just let people know what you do.
You've always been committed to the in-person meetings, though. You've never tried to go virtual, right?
We were virtual for a year.
During COVID?
Yeah.
But, I mean, you believe in getting together and the connection of actually meeting and getting together.
I think both have their validity. Because if you're going to do a weekly meeting, we don't have this issue here in Kansas City as much. Although I found during COVID, and you know this, you have investors that invest here in Kansas City that live in California. They live in Alaska. We had one girl that I think she was in the Netherlands jumped on some of our meetings. But during COVID, I was getting members. They invested here in Kansas City, but they didn't come to meetings because they are not going to fly into Kansas City every month. So when we were virtual, we had a lot of out-of-state investors joining us. And then we don't have it so much here, but other REIAs found that where the big traffic cities like Washington, D.C. or Baltimore, they're sticking with the virtual because more people could get to the meetings because they don't have the hour commute to get there.
Let's pivot to the economy. It's now 2023. We've had this 6-month kind of grind where it feels like the market took a heavy pause as rates had to stabilize. I feel like we're there, but curious to get your thoughts. What do you see in 2023 coming down the pipeline, and how do you see the market for buying and selling?
For buying and selling, I attended a State of the Industry event with Eddie Speed this week and listened to his take on it, and I kind of agree with him. But he was sharing how a lot of the big hedge funds stopped buying in the last half of last year. A lot of the big investors here in Kansas City, myself included, I didn't buy anything.
I didn't either. I took a hard pause. Everybody
is waiting for the other shoe to drop to see how it's going to shake out. One of our investors here in town said that he had bought a lot of stuff at the beginning of 2022 that he's working through, and nothing was selling before Christmas, but I've been noticing, he's like, oh yeah, people are starting to buy houses again. But we do expect interest rates to go up two more times in the first half of 2022. That's what the experts are saying.
2023, you mean?
2023. Got to get my years right.
Yep.
But that they should start coming down again at the end of the year. I think prices have changed dramatically, not necessarily in Kansas City. I think everything I'm seeing is kind of, they've leveled off. I'm seeing, what we're looking at, like we're not on the market for 14 seconds anymore. It's 14 days, 21 days.
Yeah.
We're having more normal times on market. Houses are selling under list price from time to time now, not 40,000 over. I think at the height, we sold a house. We listed it 25,000 over and sold it 40,000 over list, and I was in shock. We sold our lake house. We were in a bidding war. And Hang on. You were in a bidding war when you bought it or when you were selling it? When we sold it. I had 3 buyers bidding on our property, and we finally stopped at a price. They were all paying cash. There was no bank involved. And we stopped finally. We were, we can keep going, but we want... We
want the surety of close.
Well, we wanted the people we liked to buy it, not the people that were rude and obnoxious. So we took their offer. But a year later, our neighbors sold the exact same condo for $100,000 more than we did.
Wow.
But that was Lake the Ozarks. They have a lot less inventory than we do here in Kansas City. But that was what people were seeing in certain neighborhoods here in Kansas City, and that's not happening anymore.
Yeah, we moved. We moved at our condo down there. Similar kind of story. We saw it come on the market, had to jump immediately, and because we just wanted to move 2 doors over to kind of get an end unit. So we knew the guy. We didn't know he was going to put on the market, and we had to jump immediately and just pay whatever he was asking.
We were finding people were wanting. We would be walking down the road to taking our daily walk, and people would drive up next to us. Do you know anybody who wants to sell a house? It was like doing a drug deal with houses.
Hey, this has been awesome. I know we've already kind of covered some mistakes. One of the things, the podcast is called Mistake Free Real Estate, obviously after the book of the same name, but very much tongue in cheek. We obviously know that, there's so many mistakes to be made in real estate. I'll give you time to reflect on maybe a good story that you have from there. We've clearly heard that, maybe from your landlording experience, buying too many too fast, in an area that you would not want to hold long term, clearly just kind of a little bit of a sketchy area in the inner city of Kansas City, and then not having a good property management company, obviously kind of tied to the location as well, but not having dialed in property management were kind of 3 mistakes that someone could look out for if they're trying to build a portfolio. Can you take us back to a kind of a funny story or something, one of the mistakes you've made through all those times, something that you and Don had to persevere with to get through?
Well, I really don't have a particular story. I'm trying to think, because we don't do a lot of the buy and hold.
Yeah.
I think that's one of our mistakes was we didn't do a lot of buy and hold. So if we stop working, we have a few deals that are passive investments, but they're notes. They're not rentals. But we didn't jump into the rental game because we didn't like tenants. So I'm going to say that's one of our biggest mistakes is we're ready to go do things now, and we can't. If we go do things, there's nobody running our business. We don't have a big staff. So,
wow.
We do have some, passive income like rentals with the notes. But with a rental, it keeps making rental money until you decide for it to not be a rental. With a note, eventually they will pay you off. And then you have to start over. Of course, if they pay you off, you get money and you can go buy a new note. But
no, that will hit home so well with our audience, Kim, because one of the things that I believe the real estate industry in general has done such a poor job of over the past 30 years is ready, willing, and able investors, people that can and should invest in real estate. I think in general we've done a really poor job catering to said investor to allow them the luxury of investing in real estate. I mean, when you sign up for a job, the first thing they do is to say, hey, can I, you sign up and you fill out your W-2 and, how much do you want to put in? Because we'll match percentage to put it in the stock market. You're literally like selling into the stock market from the day you take a job. They don't say, do you want to start investing in real estate? Now, obviously there's reasons for that, but the point being, we've become so in tune with just throwing all of our retirement and our hopes into the stock market, and those that are in corporate America that have, that are making good money and choose to get into real estate, there's really not many turnkey providers out there that are saying, hey, I can do everything for you. How about you start investing in it? Because it's, as you well know, you're dealing with the active investors, right? But for passive investors, there's really no way to just hit the easy button.
There are a few platforms out there that are now offering, some of the big hedge funds will let you invest small amounts into their apartment complex investments. Or
in a fund. I'm
actually testing out one that does hard money lending, and you can invest as little as, $25 to fund somebody's rehab loan. And so far, so good. Everything I've been doing 500 increments.
I think Roofstock's actually doing that too.
One, and this is ground floor. I'm testing the waters, but again, if they tank, then all your money's gone. But if you're diversifying, I'm looking at, because we're lending on notes, but if you got 500 on 5 different, you've got $5,000 in 10 different notes, your probability of failure is very low.
Yeah, diversified. Yeah, no, I just...
But not many people know that. They don't know they're out there.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Even in the industry.
But your point that you made on, you and Don potentially wanting to go down a road of this, retirement and removing yourself from the day-to-day, for people out there that are actively involved in an income and maybe in their 30s and 40s, if you and I could kind of go back and say, or even late 20s even, they're starting to make some good money, being able to invest, because I think with real estate, would you agree that it's just the time that's involved? Real estate always wins in the end. If we could go back and invest 20 years ago in real estate, you and I would be sitting on a beach, not sitting in a studio.
Knowing what we know now, we would have done a lot of things differently.
Yeah, and do you think that would change now? Like, would you not be encouraging people to say, hey, look, if you look at history, there's probably a strong possibility that in 20 years' time, you look back and say, if I had have invested in real estate now. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Well, I can look at my son. He has rentals. He's been buying rentals a little bit at a time, and he has the passive income. So between him and us, we all decided, in partly because of the market last year, that we were going to stop all of our efforts at create. I know if the phone rang, we were going to answer it, but we weren't going to make the phone ring.
Yeah.
And we took that off. We were able to do that because we'd sold enough houses last year, but he was able to do that because he had the passive income.
That's awesome.
Because, what are you going to do at 35? You're just going to stop working for 3 months? But when you have the passive income, you can do that.
That's awesome. You got to be super proud of Scott for building that portfolio. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time. One last question, and I know you're not a golfer. I like to always ask the guests on my podcast that, I enjoy golf because you get to kind of walk 4 hours with someone, that you obviously like, and you can get to know them better. And that time together, I think, is valuable to just really, get to the heart of who someone is. So my question to our guests is always, if you had a choice of walking with 3 other people, call it a long walk on the beach if you're not a golfer, but a walk around a golf course, who are those 3 people, living or dead, famous or people that who would you choose to take that walk with for 3 or 4 hours on a beautiful afternoon in Kansas City?
Well, they had warned me this was the question, and I thought about that a long time, but the only person I could come up with that I would like to spend would be my mother, because she wanted to be a real estate investor, but she didn't know that it existed or knew how to do that. She wanted to be a doctor. She was before her time. She was not for her to see what we're doing today were all things that she talked about when I was growing up that we were never able to do. So I would love to spend time with her again so she could see what the world's like today, at least part of the world.
How long ago did you lose her?
Probably about 20 years so, yeah.
Oh, wow. So, but you're living the legacy then, playing in the real estate game that she probably wanted for you.
Well, she had a plan. When we were growing up, my dad built houses, so they bought 4 lots, and so the idea was we build a house and we live in it, and then we build the next house and sell this one, And by the time they got to the fourth house, they were supposed to be free and clear. By the fourth house, free and clear. But we only made it to the second house. So, and then my dad's like, I'm not building any more houses.
That's a fun story. Well, I've appreciated your time today and your insight into Kansas City and the REIA community. I really appreciate you joining us. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
You're listening to Mistake-Free Real Estate Radio, the authority in passive real estate investing. No late-night calls, no clogged drains, no tenant nightmares. Take the passive investor's approach to real estate investing and trust a turnkey professional. Learn more at mistakefreerealestate.com. Until next time, remember, you don't get rich from what you earn, you get rich from what you own.